This is the story of Geof D'Poet, a spoken word artist using his voice to inspire and change lives. So if you're out there and unclear of what lies ahead for you, fear no further, as Geof's story is one of uncertainty but also one of hard work, making him the person he is today. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and let's get into the video.
I'm Geof D'Poet. Basically, my biological name is Senyondo Geoffrey. I originate from a place called Chotera district. That's where I'm born from. I happen to grow up from an orphanage, let me say that. Not because I'm an orphan, but I grew up from the homes of what is now known as Children of Uganda, but then it was known as Daughters of Charity. National Theatre has a lot to do with that because they nurtured so many people. I think my life changes much during the senior 4 examinations when they came through and happened to do quite a little well, 17 points. Then the organization by then had decided that unless if you passed, then they cannot take you on anymore. But since I had excelled, they tried out and I happened to get a place in Seta High School. So when I get a place in Seta High School, I do what PEM art. So I do a little bit of drawing. I did drawing for some time, though it's not what I practice now, but I'm trying to show you the creative journey that I've always had around me. So after Seta High School, God does wonders. I happened to go through with 22 points, and I would say I was newspaper material then. So I still have that old paper. So I made it. I think the 3rd best in the school. So that qualified me to get my third choice. That was mechanical engineering at Chambogo University. Literally, I wanted to be an architect because I felt I needed a lot to do with modeling and stuff like that.
As you can see, Geof was a very smart person while in high school. But besides doing PEM for his A-level, with his sights on becoming a mechanical and manufacturing engineer, he later wasn't moved by the career choice when he got into the field.
Having done mechanical and manufacturing engineering, literally that dictated that I had to be in a factory. Practicing 6 months, I realized my brains are not meant to be programmed, like I'm a creative. So I resigned. After resigning, totally focused on trying to create, and being that my mom is a tailor, I settled in with her to do tailoring at home so I could help her out here and there. During that time, a friend of mine called Eddie, he took me on, having tried out a company called Upcon Technical Services. So he took me on, I started working with him, and there he introduced me to refrigeration and air conditioning. So I became an expert in that direction, being able to repair fridges, ACs. Did that like for around 3 years. That is like from 2015 to 2018. So 2018, I joined Knight Frank, which is a facility management company, having my exposure being a handyman at Acacia Mall. Then right from there, worked like for 1 year and 8 months. COVID kicked in. During that COVID period, another company asked me to take on their role, having taken on contracts at Crescent Towers and also Rwenzori Towers, and that's Broad, Uganda. So I'm now currently working with those guys in terms of technical stuff.
You won't always be sure of what you truly want until you try things out. And I think Geof's story enlightens us a lot on that point. Now, let's find out how Geof becomes a poet.
When COVID kicks in, we stay at home, and I realized I had a lot of time on me. However, the income was not there. So what I did was to figure out what I could do. And that's when eyes opened unto me about spoken word poetry. Because I used to write, like when I go for church services, I could ask for an opportunity and I would read out what I've written. When I was at Acacia, there is a guy called Farouk. He's the marketing manager. Right now, even I think he's still the current marketing manager of Acacia Mall. This guy now, like we could talk, and he's like, by the way, this is your time to write, to do stuff and brand yourself, because he has the marketing aspect to it. It's like, you need to self-brand yourself, come up with a brand name. Since many people are calling me Geof around the place, because I'm Geoffrey Senyondo, I adopted the Geof aspect around because everyone was calling me Geof. Then that's when it dawned on me, I can actually call myself Geof D'Poet. Now, it would be the poet, but everyone was calling themselves the poet. So I adopted that French kind of stuff of the poet. You see, tiny man, you can simply label me friend. That doesn't bow to bell. You see, my price tag. The spark of real performance happens July 16th, 2021. I happened to lose my kid brother on that particular day. But during that time, I fell, I think, into a depression for some months, from July to around December. Depression was about figuring out stuff in life. I was like, yes, I have this whole stuff on me. I'm a plumber, I'm a technician, I'm this aspiring poet, but what have I done in my space? And it dawned on me that I wasn't different from him. I would be the victim in that same space, but maybe God has a reason. I resolved that maybe I would step out and try the water, because Jose, even in his absentia, he was so passionate about media. To me, I was inspired that if Jose was passionate about what he wanted to do, it's my turn to get passionate, to communicate. Poetry kicked in as my only medium. I realized poetry and my passion for music and guitar gives me better opportunities to communicate, to create better social capital with people than just being behind the spanners and stuff like that. And thanks to Mark Gordon Mugasha, who is, I think, the team leader at Lado Poetry House, after January 1st, 2022, this guy gave me my first platform at Karibu. He asked me to come and perform my 2 poem pieces that I had.
One thing I like about poets is their ability to communicate our grievances, sorrows, excitement in a way that is hard. The words they choose, the tone of voice with which they say their poems, the medium they use to deliver their poems, all play a role in their ability to communicate. And it all starts by discovering that you have a voice and not wait for hard times to hit before you can have your say.
Once kissed by cerebral, intonation rehearsal through the room. Ink bend on white sheets in the early hours of the night. Man, that feeling. Yeah, now the inspiration for poetry for me is I love to speak. I love to make points known. Whatever we see right now, the few things that we are able to talk about is because they've been moved by a lot to do with creativity, poetry, music, and I believe that alone can tell. And that's why you find, even if it's worship, it's embedded in music. If you find people doing cultural dances, like to really establish a culture, it's a lot to do with poetry and music.
That's well said. Culture is driven by poetry, and as a poet, learn to take notice of things that happen around you and then communicate it. Because as a poet, you see the world through the lens of heightened awareness, paying close attention to details, emotions, and the interconnection of things using language creatively. It all sounds complex, but watch and listen to a lot of poets and you'll better understand what I'm trying to say.
At the start, I used to do a lot of self-introduction. For NBS, I did a funny thing. I was in my house, wrote this poem, printed it on paper, created myself a bio, put it in an envelope. I had a small bike. I rode up to Bokoto. I put it at the reception. Someone read about me and they called me after. And I think that was the most craziest thing I've ever done. But it led me to so many places, to Vumbla Uganda Festival. I've been to Bantu Migration Festival. Right now, I happen to be in a position whereby there is some background introduction about me. I've been at the theater a couple of times, and I've also done a couple of other, I would say, like referrals that people have brought up.
I always go by the saying that for you to get by with luck, you have to put in the work, and that way you get by with luck. That one morning Geof writes a poem and creates for himself a bio, then rides to NBS, made the difference in his career as a poet. And the same can happen for you.
Most of my friends, even in the poetry circles, have asked me. There's a guy, I think over the weekend, he asked me, how are you able to be working and then you come and you don't miss out almost on every poetry event? The truth be said, I'm so grateful for Brawl Uganda that I work for right now. Being able to balance between the passion and work, it is okay, partly based on the fact that they've given me that ground. So I'm able to balance that because there is a supportive team around me, and also I always be open to myself. In case I'm not going to be around, I strike to communicate that I will not be there. I try to make sure people know Geof will be on the building on a particular day, and when I'm there, I strike to make sure I deliver as they request me to deliver. So, my family may happen to watch this before, but the biggest challenges I've got is how to explain myself and what I do to the perspective they have about me. Everyone thinks you're a mechanical engineer, you graduate 5, 7 years, 8, let me say 10 years in the field. Everyone expects something like a better expectation of you. But probably now you should be having a house, driving a simple car for yourself. Married by now. So being able to stay in the space of my family and everyone really asking me these questions and finding answers for them, I think is the most tricky part for now. Seriously, I don't have definite answers for that. That is the most biggest challenge. The other challenge would be, obviously, art takes investment. It takes time. It takes money. So many times we've organized events and you end up, maybe you really up to balance. Mark can attest to this. But then the beauty is the satisfaction comes with you seeing something you wanted to come through. That wouldn't really be much of a challenge, but yet it is still a challenge.
I like that Geof airs out his family's expectations about the work he does. It's not easy finding a well-paying job in Kampala, even with the right documents. But you can't sit and wait for what isn't there yet. What is important is to find work and start.
Growing up from that orphanage setup communicated a lot to me. I came to understand that everyone has a path, like destinies can't be the same. So sometimes the person you've met today and is doing well, maybe is recording his EP. Literally they've had another 7 years in the background you've not known of trying out things and messing up and doing whatever they can do. It is a challenge sometimes when you find people and they're really a little far ahead of you. But then to me, I take it as a honor to work with them actually. I know it's a challenge sometimes, but I usually tame my ego to understand that I have a journey. So I'm just honored to fall into their footsteps and get better in their space.
Destinies can't be the same. Beautiful. If that doesn't take the weight off your shoulders, I don't know what will. Your path is different from another person's path, and therefore get good at working at your path, and maybe you'll also achieve great things.
From 2022 to now 2024, totally, if it's like counting blessings, I can't count them all. My biggest so far was performing at the 70th anniversary of Kenya National Theatre.
Put your hands together and let's give a round of snaps to Geof D'Poet. Remember, we are live on Facebook, on East Africa Poetic Our Battle. Karibu sana. Geof D'Poet from Uganda.
That was November 2022, and that I just did see that coming. But just to give you a simple snippet, it was because I got involved with a brand called Wild Animal Protection, and those guys are based in Kenya, Nairobi, but they hold events at the National Theatre in terms of wildlife conservation. And the biggest that I can't leave out was doing an opening act at Geof D'Poet's Once Upon a Time in Kampala last year at Motive.
This is unemotional romance. To my heartbeat rhythm, he rides like a well-played, monumented ninth chord over an embedded layer of seventh chord progressions.
Geof D'Poet comes to Uganda, and I happened to be invited to be part of the event, and I was the very first poet on that stage. So I can't just count the blessings enough. I've done so many at the theatre, being part of so many projects, and also recording the first song with my man Edward Kayondo. Omwana we Nabingo. That was a very big project. Thanks to Jude at the Studio National Theatre being able to give us that opportunity to record that song. I can't mention them enough. I have to look straight into the camera and tell you, it is draining. Sometimes you can go to your place to sleep and first of all, maybe you're hungry. You don't have, sometimes it's a lonely journey, unless if you get someone who really understands you, but people may not understand what you're doing and it drains you too much. But anyway, it's a decision you have to make. So if you want to go freelancing at the same time, maybe try to do what you do, maybe your profession, then you have to decide and make sure you work on your time management. It's something I struggle with, but it's the truth be said. If you can master your calendar very well, then you will be able to fulfill people's deadlines, timelines, and then you will be able to also enjoy yourself. Because anyway, that is the only thing you have that makes you happy. So why not give it a shot? As some people say, life is too short. Because at the end of the day, it is what you do that will inspire someone else and most probably live. In my poem called I'm Geof D'Poet, I've done a line that says, I speak to the downcast, speak for the hurting outcast. I aim to inspire before I expire, regardless of my limited sphere. So it doesn't matter. Your sphere may be limited. Can you inspire someone within that sphere that you're in?
Awesome. Now let's hear what Geof's plans for the future are.
I wouldn't deny I wish to appear on poetry festivals like Lagos International Poetry Festival. I would wish to appear on TV poetry shows like Voices in Power, at least to express my poetry. Though that can be a short term, maybe let me call it a short term. But in the long run, I would wish to see Ugandan poetry space recognized out there. I would wish to see a government-aided poetry platform under maybe the Ministry of Culture and Gender and whatever, where we can nurture. There are so many people I've met, young boys and girls who are good in crafting, not only scripting for theater, but also in terms of communicating in the challenges that we face outside. That guys that have not even studied literature, but because there are no systematic directed platforms, these guys just don't take this serious. Yet out there, it is something that can even earn them a living. So my whole aspiration would be to see at least our poetry space in Uganda also get a real system that now enables young poets to come into the space and also the older poets to pass on the skills they've gotten to the young poet.
I have lost my original soul. Peace is served in the newspaper headlines, but treachery packed in the fine print.
If you're inspired by this interview, leave a like, and if you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel for more discussions like this. Now here's a special poem from Geof D'Poet.
They said, I walk next to my ancestors, that I was the perfect definition of down to earth, that I was such a lad that needed a chair to reach puberty. As if playing with my body parts wasn't enough, they asked me that I should pray that the next birthdays come with ladders, so that I could be able to take a sneak peek into my future. Literally, they dared my body stature, describing me with all sorts of insinuating metaphors. See, it took long for me to dare dressing in shorts, because literally, every single short was never short for me, Mr. Short. So, down that valley of the uncertain, I roamed with a mind that only knew feeble. But the darkness within my soul was meant to tremble. A fugitive of myopic centrism, I hung onto that cliff of self-activism until a lifeline was drawn for me to hang on. Scarred hands onto a rugged piece of wood, pierced feet onto a wedged log. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me throw a small pulse into your heartbeat, take you down through a journey of what was disguised under stature description. See, I'm not exceptional, but I'm just intentional, aka the international. Unpredictable, I'm rational, in search of God's best direction. With every single ink, I aim to be sensational. I seek to inspire before I expire, regardless of my limited sphere. I seek and intend to explore. Like a camera, I focus on what's important, capture the good times and develop from the negatives. And in case it doesn't work out, guess what? I take another shot. I aim to actualize, to conceptualize, to speak to the downcast, speak for the hurting outcast. I intend to capitalize on every single shot given, to make him known by whom this steward I own. Now speaking of where I would be without him, surely my little mind can never fathom. For all things were made through him, and nothing was ever made without him. I'm part of his well-designed vessels, my life not my own, my life to him I do owe. Poetic, I'm artistic, faith fanatic yet realistic, articulate with a futuristic, eloquent about the craptastic. Draft 1, draft 2 is my mandate. And for this, I will roll. I'm Geof D'Poet, and it's always a pleasure reciting for you, my dear audience.
Yes, yes.